Please welcome Linda Rising.
Good morning. Good morning. What are you doing today? What are you doing right now? Sitting. Okay. You're also sitting in the dark. Thank you for coming on a Saturday morning to sit in the dark with me. And you're going to be sitting all day. So this is Scandinavia, after all. I shouldn't have to tell you. But if it were the United States, I would have to remind you. During the break, you should get out of this room. We're talking about thinking, problem solving. How many of you do some thinking? That's how you earn a living? Thinking? Yeah, somebody pays you to think. So wouldn't it be a good idea if you did a better job of it? So you'd be more efficient, more productive, and maybe get a raise or a promotion or whatever it is that your goal happens to be. Well, we can start right now. So the first tip of the day is do not spend your time sitting all day. Whether you're sitting here listening to a lot of, I hope, very good talks, or whether you're working, sitting is the new smoking. It's absolutely the worst thing for your brain. So the room is arranged really nicely for this. And I'm going to be watching, I'm going to be here all day to see how many of us do not sit, but instead move to the side, stand up, walk around. You do a much better job of thinking when you're standing. And I'm going to see who sits here over the break instead of going outside where you have light on two sides. You can go in either direction and look at natural light, which is very good for your brain. Have a little snack. Sugar is also good for your brain. It runs on glucose. And I hope that if you don't remember anything else today, because you're going to be overwhelmed with information and data, that standing, going outside, looking at natural light, I think probably in Scandinavia you're well aware of those things, aren't you? This is not new, but you forget. And you get caught up in the talks or the problem that you're working on. So we're going to talk about thinking fast and slow. This slide has my contact information on it. As most of you who perhaps don't know me or have never seen me, now you're realizing I'm incredibly old. As the speaker introduction mentioned, I finished my PhD right before my 50th birthday. And that was 27 years ago. Usually I get applause at that point. Okay, thank you. So I know I'm closer to the end than the beginning, and I only talk about things that I think are very important. And I know I don't have time to talk to everybody, so you will have to help. One way you can do that, if you think this is a worthwhile topic, is to ask me for the PowerPoint. And then you can translate it into Swedish or do whatever you want. There is no copyright on any of these slides. So send me some email. Say, Linda, I know you're going to die soon. I really enjoyed the talk, and I think now I should start to give it, my version of it. So would you please send me the PowerPoint, and I will be happy to do that. So we're going to talk about thinking fast and slow. I want to set my timer. This is for dysfunctional children, so I can do that. Is that you? Is that what you do all day? You sit, you stare at a computer screen. Come on, is that what you do all day? Yeah, pretty much. Is that what you call thinking? In fact, if you're not doing that, do you worry that someone in your office might see that you're not doing that, and then they would believe you're not working? You're not thinking about the problem you're supposed to be solving. They want to see you sitting and staring at a screen, because that's what thinking is all about, isn't it? Or how about that? If you're not sitting alone, you're sitting in a group. Staring, well, wait a minute, that's what you're doing now. You're sitting and staring at a different kind of screen. Have you ever been in a meeting where someone pounded on the table and said, "We are not leaving until we come up with the estimate, solve the problem, address the question," whatever it is. We are not leaving this room. In Sweden, has that ever happened? Yeah. So that's how you spend your time. What are similarities between these two settings? That and this. What do you see? I've already mentioned some. What's the same? Sitting, obviously, sitting and sitting in the dark, inside, no windows typically.
Trying very hard.
Yes, focused. Focused attention, as though focus is a good thing. Anything else? Yes, absolutely, forced. You're forcing yourself to pay attention, staring, as though staring will solve the problem. There are some things I notice, staring, focus, under a lot of pressure. And you wouldn't want to get up and walk around or take a break, because then people would think you're not working, so you sit. And that's what passes for thinking today, is that focused attention under pressure. And, well, let's take a survey. On average, I'm not going to ask you about last night. I know there were some speakers out fairly late last night. How much sleep do you get on average? How many get 10 hours on average a night? 10. Oh, nobody gets 10 hours. 1. Okay, hire this guy. Einstein slept 10 hours a night. That's what we as humans got before the industrial age, an average of 10 hours. I'll bet in Sweden in the winter it was longer than 10. How many got 9 on average? 9? Anybody? Ah, okay, it is Scandinavia after all. 8. Ooh, that's very good. 7? Ah, there it is. Okay, 7 is the global average. 7 hours of sleep, not enough. There are some people who believe if we could just get rid of sleep, wouldn't we be more productive? So the answer is no. Not only would you not be more productive, you would probably die. So that's not a good idea. This is the topic of the talk, this book. How many of you have heard of it? Thinking Fast and Slow? Ah, okay, keep your hands up. Good, good, good. How many of you who have heard of it have actually read it? Ah, 1. Okay, well, we're going to hire that guy and this guy. All right. You bought the book. All right, I should have had that. How many bought the book, then how many read the book? How many of you who bought the book read at least the first chapter? Ah, okay, so a few people read the first chapter. The problem with it is it's very dense. A lot of information, a lot of research. So I usually say I read a worthwhile book always at least twice. So this book I read 3 times before I felt I really had a certain level of understanding in order to be able to talk about it. Because what's in the book, well, it's about thinking. And I believe that's important. And we need to do a better job of it. So let's look at the research around thinking. So it was written by a fellow named Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize in 2002. The book was published in 2011. It's old news. So I finally decided a couple of years ago I should start talking about it because nobody's going to have any time to read it. So this is not the entire book, but it's what I think the most important message of the book is all about. And then my own spin on the heart of the book. So the book is about the research of two individuals, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the book, who won the Nobel Prize, and his partner, Amos Tversky, who unfortunately has died. You cannot win a Nobel Prize. What's up with that? You know, who makes those rules about the Nobel Prize? What country's in charge of that anyway? You can't win a Nobel Prize if you're dead. Well, I better hurry up. So Amos cannot win it, and of course Amos could not help write the book. But the book is about the work of two individuals, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, and it's packed full of research, of science. Daniel Kahneman is the first one who said, people are not rational decision makers. He created something that's totally different in the field of economics, because for those of us who've had a lot of economics, the premise, the starting point was people are rational. They make logical decisions. And on that foundation, an entire field of study was created that had a lot of mathematics, but no research. I know I studied economics for a long time, and I loved the mathematics. Unfortunately, it doesn't prove anything. Mathematics in a vacuum, mathematics without any empirical foundation, is at best worthless and at worst deceptive. Because we look at all that mathematics and we believe because it's so impressive. Kahneman instead said, I have evidence that people are not rational. They make decisions for a whole host of reasons, but logic is not one of them. And now we have to get rid of economics and replace it with a brand new field called behavioral economics. How many of you have heard of that? So is classical or traditional economics still around? Anybody? Yes, it is. People are still teaching it, especially at the University of Chicago. And why is that? Why are we keeping around an entire field of study that rests on a very shaky foundation? Well, and also there are plenty of very smart people who say, no, this is my field. I'm going to keep teaching it. Max Planck said the way we make progress is not by learning new things. We have to wait for the people who believe the old ideas to die. And then we can move forward. So I hope you're not enrolled in a program in economics. The field is dead. Give it up. Move on to behavioral economics. Kahneman and Tversky changed everything. And the world is not paying attention. So I hope I can give you a little bit of what's in that book, because it's based on science. And what we know is what you do all day, or if you, well, how many of you are developers? Write code? See? You really haven't made any progress, what you are doing now, from what I did when I started. It's a slow growing field. The programs are bigger. They make a lot of decisions now. We've been talking about artificial intelligence. We think that's a new thing. Oh my goodness, no. People have been talking about that for decades. And they say, oh, in the next 2 years to 5 years, we're going to do, well, we haven't yet. We're having debates that we had 20, 30 years ago. So we are in a slow-moving field. We don't do any science. We don't do experiments to say, would it be better to do it this way or this way? Well, let's do a randomized controlled. No, we don't. So we're stuck. At least we can look elsewhere where there is science, where there are experiments, and learn and apply that to what we do. So that's my goal, is give you some tips. Kahneman presents an interesting model for your brain. This is a behavioral model, an operational model. It's how your brain works. It's not picturesque. It doesn't map to areas of the brain. It's not a physical model. It's how you think, not what parts of the brain do the thinking. And he calls them, and this is not his creation, System 1 and System 2. It actually has been in the field for a long time. So those are not his terms. Some people object to those. I do. But unfortunately, now we're stuck with this. So System 1, System 2. Look at the difference. Hence the name of the book, Thinking Fast and Slow. We got two components of our brain that think fast and slow. In System 1, we could call that the unconscious. It's not really, but that's pretty close. What we know about that part of the behavior of our brain is that it does not need to sleep. So if we were worried or concerned about getting rid of sleep, a part of the brain's already doing that for us. It runs 24/7. And that's a good thing, because that's the part of the brain that's in charge of breathing. Respiration is a good thing. Digestion is a good thing. Blood flow is a good thing. And those are all under the guidance of System 1. So it never sleeps. The other system, System 2, on the other hand, that's the part that comes awake or online when you wake up. It does sleep. Does not run 24/7. And so now we see the difference between System 1 and System 2. One is available all the time. The other has to sleep. One of them is fast, very fast. The other part, the conscious mind, very slow, deliberate, linear thinker. We know that System 1 is, well, we call our intuition, our gut feeling. Whereas System 2, that's our rational, logical mind. I've already told you that Kahneman's conclusion is we are not rational decision makers. Most of the time, System 2 comes along afterwards and doesn't really make the decision. System 2 justifies, creates a rationale for a decision that has been made by System 1. And the reasons for that decision are unconscious. That means we have no idea why we made that decision. We have no idea why the decisions that we make in life are made, whether it's flavor of ice cream or whether to take a job. It doesn't matter. The decision is made by System 1 and then justified by System 2. System 2 comes up with or creates or makes up the reasons for why we do everything. I don't know whether you find that frightening or enlightening. I think it's both. To realize what's in charge of what you do is totally beyond your awareness. You have no idea. Well, System 1 remembers everything. Everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard, everything you've ever read, everything you've ever done. But remember, it's unconscious. So if you lose your keys, just ask System 1 if that were possible to say, hey, where did I put those keys? Actually, we will talk about that. You can do that. System 2, on the other hand, doesn't remember much at all. It's not just old people like me. You don't remember either. I know. You forget stuff. You leave your phone behind 50% of the time. Oh, I forgot my phone. I better, doesn't remember. Look at the processing speed of System 1. About 11 million bits per second. Very fast. System 2, on the other hand, 40. We think we see, we think we hear, we think we touch, we're aware of a lot of information. Nothing. It's nothing that we're aware of. Hardly anything. Whereas what we're not aware of, an enormous amount of information. We know that most of what we do in terms of thinking and making decisions and solving problems is done by System 1, about 95%, and the rest is done by what we think we're aware of, what we think we do consciously. Hardly anything. The problem is System 1 is unconscious, unaware. We don't know what it's doing. We have no control over it. And that nice System 2 that wakes up when we do, that's the part that talks to us all day. That's the part that we use when we typically solve problems or think about anything. These two pieces, our gut feeling, our intuition versus our identity, are very different. Some people used to think that it was a little bit like an iceberg, that the unconscious was the part below water, the conscious, the part that you can see. It's a metaphor, isn't it? An iceberg for what we're aware of and what we're not aware of. The part below the waterline is always enormous. But what scientists are discovering now is they were wrong. I don't know if you can see it, but on top of the mountain, above the water, the peak on the right has a little tiny, minuscule snowball. That's your conscious mind. And the rest of it, above water, below water, that's your unconscious. Hardly anything conscious. So we know that what goes on in System 1 is a collection of things that are called heuristics that help us make decisions. It's also where all your expertise lies. And that's expertise in programming languages or playing golf. Any sport, any musical instrument, anything that you know how to do well is done by System 1. It has a lot of automatic mental processes and something called associative memory. And its job is simply to make up a story about what is happening to you in your life, so that you can proceed through the day in what you think is a logical manner because it makes sense to you. You cannot hand anybody information or yourself take on information if it doesn't make sense to you. It just will not stick. So it's the job of associative memory to do that for you so that you can learn and move forward. It takes all new information and says, I must put this together in a story that makes sense to me, and that means I am the hero of the story. It's all about me. And it's very good, System 1. That. Here are a small selection. And in fact, people are starting finally to talk about these heuristics or biases that System 1 uses. These, I think, in my opinion, are the worst. So the first one is called confirmation bias. It says, once you believe anything, remember associative memory has the job of making sense out of everything. Well, one way it does that is to make sure that anything new that you learn fits. And if it doesn't, you will find a way to ignore it. So in the most classic experiment that was ever done on confirmation bias, they took two groups of people who violently disagree on, well, anything. It's been done many times. If you were to appear in the United States right now, you would have no problem finding two groups of people who violently disagree on anything, whether it's abortion rights or gay marriage. In fact, my daughter's church is about ready to go through a giant split on marriage between people who are either gay or lesbian or transgender. They're going to divide on the basis of that one issue. So it's not too hard to find two groups of people who disagree violently. And now what we're going to do is give both groups of people some data. We're going to give them a paper, a research paper about the contentious issue. And in the paper will be some results of experiments, some real information, some data, some measurements. So here we got two groups, they disagree, they read the same paper. And what do the members of both groups say? Yes, this paper supports my point of view. How is that possible? If they disagree and they read the same paper, how can they conclude that the paper supports their different points of view? And this experiment has been repeated with multiple issues. The result has been verified, in other words, over and over in different cultures. We all do this. We're able to take information that might contradict our belief and we'll work around it. We'll say, oh, look at that study. It only had 10 people. An N of 10, that's not statistically significant. I can ignore that. Oh, here's another study was done by people at Harvard. What do they know? We'll find a way. And it will make sense to us. And afterwards, because we've gone through that exercise, we will feel better about our position. So looking at contradictory evidence not only does not convince. How many of you have tried to argue with someone who holds a different opinion and you used a set of facts and you said, look, this, and this, therefore you are wrong and I am right. How many of you have tried that? How did that work out for you? Was that successful? Did the other person say, oh, I see now. I see now. Oh, it's clear. Yes, you have pointed out the error of my ways. Is that what happened? No. Because while you were doing this, they were responding, countering every one of your facts with facts of their own, not really hearing you. Oh, and wait a minute. Maybe you have done that yourself. Facts are not convincing for that reason. How does that make you feel? I've gone through this a million times and it makes me feel sick to my stomach. We're talking about our species here. This is how we think. The primary heuristic by which we make important decisions in life rests on the confirmation bias. Well, I guess you don't have Trump for a president, so maybe that's why I get. Cognitive dissonance. We can't look at both sides of an argument, which is a classic approach to saying, well, if you're going to learn anything, you should look at both sides. Consider both sides of the argument. We cannot. Confirmation bias gets in the way. It's impossible for us to change our minds about anything important. And finally, naive realism. We believe the world runs on logic. If those people over there would just listen and they would understand what I'm trying to tell them, the world would be a better place. So the result is we have excessive confidence in what we believe. We think we're rational decision makers. We have no idea that we carry around a set of biases. Kahneman himself says, I wrote the book, and I have all these biases. I have all of these flaws in my decision making. People read the book and they think they're going to get better. I wrote the book and it didn't help me. We know System 2 does pay attention. System 2 is logical, but it's got a lot of limitations. It's slow, it's the slow brain. And you should take notice of this today as well, you can measure the cognitive limit that you have on focused attention. It is 50 minutes. You cannot pay attention to anything for longer than 50 minutes. That's all you got. We know that we learn through System 2. It picks up new skills, new habits, new abilities. And once we've got that information, then we pass that on to System 1. That's where our expertise lies. And once we have it, you don't want to call it up again. So it's a classic mistake for a sports professional who is an expert in anything from soccer to golf to gymnastics. It's all handled now by System 1, that's the unconscious. And they'll consciously try to remember, all right, let's see, left shoulder down, and now I want to pull the golf club back. And as soon as they do that, they're dead. Because they're putting System 2 now in charge of expertise that System 1 can handle very well on its own without conscious attention, thank you very much, and slowing things down, and now they begin to make mistakes. So once you're an expert in anything, leave it. Leave it to System 1. We know this is not reality, this is just a model. Kahneman's model doesn't map to the brain. Can't say, is this the prefrontal cortex? Is that System 2? Could it be the amygdala as part of System 1? We don't know. Kahneman's not interested in that. There's another model that I also like. This is from Chip and Dan Heath and also Jonathan Haidt, who said, your brain is like a man riding an elephant. The elephant is really in charge. It's big. That's System 1. System 2 is the rider. Yeah, the rider can try to keep the elephant in tow and steer it down a path, but really if the elephant wants to go one way or the other, the elephant is going to go. I like what Jonathan Haidt says about trying to argue with someone. Instead of using facts, he says, talk to the elephant. Maybe you can remember that. Talk to the elephant. We know System 2 takes an enormous amount of energy. System 1, almost nothing. But 25 to 30% of the energy you take in every day goes to run System 2. It really is pay attention. You do use it up. And that means we've got limitations if it takes energy. That's why you need to take a break at least once every 15 minutes and go outside and have a snack. So normally, System 2 doesn't have to do too much. The elephant goes the way the elephant wants to go. When everything works well, then we feel pretty happy. We don't have to worry about our decisions. But remember who's in charge? The elephant, System 1. And that's really a good thing. It's better if we don't have to make conscious decisions about, should I breathe now? Oh, time not exhale. Inhale. Yeah, it would occupy an enormous amount of our attention. This is a classic experiment done with two groups of people who were asked to memorize digits. One group was asked to memorize a 7-digit number, the other a 2-digit number. And then they said, go down to the end of the hall and tell your number to the research assistant. And when you're finished, you can have your choice. You can either have some yummy chocolate cake or some nice, healthy fruit salad. Would it make a difference? Those who had memorized 7 digits versus those who had memorized 2. And whether they're going to have that, calorie dense but bad for your diet chocolate cake or the nice healthy fruit salad. What does memorizing digits have to do with your choice of food anyway? And the answer is, those that had to memorize a 7-digit number had used up so much of their cognitive energy that when they got to the end of the aisle and reported their number to the research assistant, they had nothing left in, well, we call it willpower. It's cognitive energy. They had nothing left. So they took the chocolate cake, almost 2/3. Whereas those who only had to memorize a 2-digit number, they had plenty of leftover cognitive resources, plenty of energy, if you want to call that willpower, you could. And most of them took the fruit salad. We don't often think that things like strain or stress have anything to do with the kinds of decisions that we make, but it does. This is a slide that makes me cry. Obama said, I don't have to worry about what I'm going to wear because I only choose 2 colors. He said that in an interview with Fast Company. You'll see, I only wear 2 colors because I know that that kind of decision takes a toll on my cognitive energy, and I have other important decisions to make. Isn't that wonderful? A president who thinks about thinking. So here's the first tip, okay? Don't do it. Get rid of it. Don't worry about it. Don't waste your valuable System 2 time on things that are not really that important to you. Move it. Get rid of it. Put it somewhere else. System 2 is a limited resource. You don't have too much, so don't waste it. So that, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I was a mathematician before I became a computer scientist, and I was working on a problem one night, and I finally just gave up. I went to bed. I thought, well, I've done everything I can do. And I woke up in the morning, and I took a shower, and bingo. There it was. What I'd been working for 4 or 5 hours, all of a sudden, there it was. Have you ever had that experience? Okay, so that's what we're talking about. How did that happen? Did angels come in the night and say, Linda, the answer is 42? Oh, no, that's not what happened. System 1 had been working on it all night long. My System 1. And when I gave up on it and said, okay, System 2, we're going to bed, then bingo. Lots of famous scientists, creative individuals have recognized that. What I never asked myself was, how long do I have to work before I can hand it over to, I didn't know about System 1 at the time, but to forget about it and then move on. So this is mine. This is what I took away from Kahneman, and I hope that you will take away today, is you don't have to work very long at all. So I never work 4 or 5 hours on anything anymore. I leave it. Once I understand the problem and I make an attempt to solve it, I never give it more than about 10 minutes. And if I can't see what it is that I have to do, now doing it might take a while, but knowing what to do, solving that problem, finding that bug, whatever it is, I never work on that consciously more than 10 minutes. And then I leave it. And you should too. If you're consciously spending more than 10 minutes, you're wasting your time. Because system 2 is limited, it's slow. System 1 is where your expertise is. It can multitask. You can keep throwing things on the system 1 pile all day long and move on to the next problem and the next problem and the next problem, and then wait. And just as I had that experience with the math problem, bingo, it will occur to you, the solution, the thing that you were looking for. It'll be there. Do you believe me? Would you be willing to experiment? Because this wonderful lady here on the front row is telling me I'm out of time, so I'm going to have to quit. So that's what I want you to experiment with. Once you understand the problem, leave it. Hand it over to system 1. Do something else. Later in the day, maybe the next morning, system 1 will say, hey, I got it for you. And then you can move on. So I'm going to honor your time limit, though. So I have 5 minutes, but that's okay. We won't discuss it. I'll be here all day if you'd like to talk about the rest of this, and I will leave the PowerPoint presentation with somebody. Will somebody have it? So you can look at the rest of it anyway. So take a break. You need it. You need to take a break. All right. Thank you so much.